slides? Should be able to see them now.
Yep, looks perfect.
And I'm just going to advance here. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dan, Amanda, and the rest of the folks at PASS for having me up here. Again, my name is Adam Hecktman. I'm Microsoft's Director of Technology and Civic Innovation here in Chicago. I'm part of a team at Microsoft called the Civic Technology and Engagement Team. It's a very interesting team. It's made up of it's a diverse, compassionate team made up of people who are committed to working with those who are making the world better for everyone in various cities. So today, the team works in Chicago, the San Francisco Bay Area, Seattle, Boston, and New York. And the work that we do is work with the local civic tech ecosystem to use technology to enable solutions and partnerships that are created by everyone for everyone. And I'm going to explain to you what the civic tech movement is in a minute, but the work we do is a collective effort across these cities, and it's not just Microsoft. It's formed by a very inclusive and democratic approach, and this type of collaboration is really a terrific environment to work in because the informed, inclusive, and democratic approach fosters a lot of creativity, and it really makes sure that solutions that we come up with are available to meet the differing needs we all face as humans. So as it relates to our cities and communities, think of this team as we're problem solvers looking for other problem solvers, and I'm hoping that some of those other problem solvers that we find are going to be you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Adam. Could you just minimize the GoToWebinar? We're seeing that on the screen.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right.
It's, I just switched sides.
There we go.
Uh,
Thank you. Oh,
no, it came back. Hold on.
came back.
You would think a Microsoft
I
guy of
just
25 years would know how to minimize.
just
Let's just move it down here,
click
shall we?
click on that little sure, that'll work. Or you can just click on that little
All right.
orange arrow off to the left. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, Dan, you should be seeing the complexity of city ecosystems up.
Yep, looks great.
Okay. So, this is just an example of one city. Now, you got to think about how cities are made up of systems. You have cities that are made up of various communities, but they're also made up of a complex mesh that includes a lot of different systems. So think of environmental systems, transportation systems, education systems, sewer systems, water systems, infrastructures, intricate social dynamics, not to mention political systems and other things like that. And any one of these systems is super, super complex. You know, think of the transportation system alone in Chicago, right? You have a 150-year-old L train system, plus a commuter rail system, plus two waterways with traffic and road vehicle systems and pedestrian and bike traffic to manage. And you have the L that's providing well over 500,000 uh, trips and 5 million, 4 million miles of transit. That system itself is super, super complex. But then think of all of the other systems, and they're not in a vacuum. They all are greatly affected by one another. And they're affected by things that are not even part of the built environment, right? All of these things are affected by, say, the weather system. So to me, it's amazing that cities even work at all. That the fact that all these systems just have to work and operate together, and they're so complex. But what's really neat about this is that it makes cities very rich ground for exploring and testing how technology, specifically how data, can help different communities and different systems. So that's the landscape that civic tech operates in. Let's talk about some of the trends that are making this a hot topic now. We stand at the beginning of a new era of technology, and this is driven by this kind of transformation and change that I have up here on the slide. And at the heart of this transformation lies new technology to work with the explosion of data combined with cloud computing, easier access to technology, and a need for new skills development. And the benefits of getting all this stuff right could be absolutely enormous. So, I can think of a future in which poverty's been eliminated, diseases have been eradicated, and a solution for climate change has been discovered, and data, artificial intelligence, and other technologies around data all contribute to that. Yet, with this opportunity also comes some challenges. So it's also possible to imagine a darker future where automation has driven millions of people out of the workforce, income inequality is an unbridgeable chasm, um, public safety and personal privacy are permanently undermined, etc. So which side does it go to? Where does the balance shift to? Well, part of the responsibility is going to reside in policymakers, but they won't have all of the answers on their own. I talked to someone who said yesterday, in a democracy, in a government by the people have some responsibility too. And in fact, the government wants to partner with people. It wants to partner with industry players like Microsoft. It wants to partner with communities that they serve. It wants to partner with people with skills and data who want to use those skills for the public good. I'm going to skip this slide. Which brings me to civic technology. And that's what I just talked about is really what civic tech is all about. Now, if you talk to, I don't know, talk to 8, 10 civic technologists, you'll probably get 20 or 25 different definitions of what civic tech really is. But I did a Bing search on civic tech, and these were my 4 favorite definitions of it. TechCrunch calls civic tech technology that's used to empower citizens or help make government more accessible, efficient, and effective. Now, I like this because it puts the focus on citizens and their role in making government efficient. And then the Knight Foundation says that civic technology is residents engaging in their communities, including sharing their time, information, and resources. And I like this because it speaks specifically to the types of people that are in the civic tech movement. People who want to devote their time, who have resources in terms of their minds, their mind share and skills to contribute. And then Mika Sifri, who's part of the Personal Democracy Media, which is one of the focal points of the civic tech community, says that it's technology that is used for the public good and betters the lives of the many, not just a few. So he puts the focus there on the democratic principles. But my absolute favorite definition is this one from Lauren Ellen McCann, who is sort of a luminary in the civic tech space, and she's at New America Foundation. And she puts it quite simply. Civic technology is the tools that we use to create, support, or serve the public good. So what I like about this is that she leaves it broad. The public good means the civic priorities. And the civic priorities are different in every state and in every city and in every country. In fact, within the city of Chicago, which is a city made up of many neighborhoods, civic priorities can change from neighborhood to neighborhood. Civic technology also has come in waves. And there was an article in the Christian Science Monitor that said that the first wave of civic tech was kind of the basic stuff. Teleconferencing technology to allow citizens to gather together for a conversation in large numbers. The second wave, what they called Civic Tech 2.0, goes further, where you're creating interactions between collective citizen voices and public officials. So you're using technology to have dialogue, citizen to government or community member to government. And for generations, citizens have sent letters to their rep in Congress, and politicians have done the same thing with their constituencies and voters, and now there's new avenues for voices to be heard and for voices to hear. And they said that Civic Tech 3.0 is going to take a further step and turn voters into policymakers using technology to actually not only solve problems in cities, but to actually craft policy around those solutions. So what's Microsoft's approach to this? Why are we involved in this? Well, the first thing that we're doing is we're making sure that we're partnering with the right organizations, those with expertise on what the civic issues are, right? And that differs city to city and issue to issue. If the civic issue is, let's say, environmental sustainability, that may be different than the group that's focusing on in your city on economic development, which may be different than the one that's focusing on nutrition issues and access to social justice, etc. And then partnering with those that have the technology expertise to solve those problems once they're surfaced. And that's where PASS comes in. So the civic tech community is very intertwined with the data community. And then the last thing that we're doing here is funding research. For example, we fund Dana Boyd's Data and Society, which is a group that does research focused on the social and cultural issues that are arising from data-centric development. Which brings me to the question I was originally asked to answer in this webinar, which is, what is a hackathon? A hackathon, again, I did a Bing search on it because there's a lot of different definitions, and I found this one on hackathon.guide. Hacking is what you typically think of as hacking. Hacking is creative problem solving. It doesn't necessarily have to be about technology, right? It can be broad. And then a hackathon is an event where people come together to solve those problems. Now, let me give you some examples. I work with a group here in Chicago called the Center for Neighborhood Technology, and they focus on the environmental or economic sustainability of neighborhoods that they serve around the country. And we did a hackathon where we challenged developers, data scientists, analysts, and community organizers and activists to get together to learn about each other and to hack solutions on either economic sustainability or environmental sustainability in their neighborhoods. And where it says here, any event of any duration, the hackathon itself was a weekend, but there was 6 months leading up to it where we got developers and data people together with community organizers and activists so that they could learn about the issue that the organizers were focused on and think about how they were going to solve it, maybe even get started trying to solve it, and then the weekend was putting the fit and the finish and the polish on it. And it was a great event. We had a lot of terrific guests pop in and out. We had the CTO from the U.S. Census come in, and he actually hacked with one of the teams that was focusing on food deserts and how you solve that problem. And then we had DJ Patil, who is the chief data scientist of the White House. He came in, took a look at what was going on, added his commentary to it, and it was just a great weekend. Or it can be specific. You can have a hackathon around a specific problem and not have it quite as broad. So, for example, you can have it around a specific problem or a specific technology. So you can say, do anything you want, but it's got to be focused on Power BI. Or you can say, we are specifically wanting to fix the problem of too many bikers and pedestrians getting into accidents or something like that. Okay, the fun part. I've talked a little bit about what civic technology is, but I think you really get a better sense of what it is by taking a look at some examples. And so I'm going to give you a few general examples, and then I'm going to show you some examples of civic technology projects focused on housing. I'll show you some that are focused on water issues, food issues, and social justice issues. And just as a quick checkpoint here, whoops, go back. Dan, can you confirm for me that you're seeing right now SeeClickFix? Wait, give it one more second. There. Now you're seeing SeeClickFix?
Yep. Yep,
Okay,
that's a slide we see.
so this is kind of a classic example of civic technology. If you read any of the books on civic tech, they always refer to SeeClickFix because this was one of the first citizen-driven solutions to a problem. There's a whole backstory behind it, and I won't really go into it. But think of it like this: no city government has enough human power to solve or even identify all of the problems, right? But they can build digital tools that allow citizens to communicate complaints and sometimes solutions and collaborate with the government. And this type of engagement helps both build trust in government and it empowers the citizen. So SeeClickFix lets citizens report non-emergency issues and allows the city to track, manage, and reply, ultimately making neighborhoods better through transparency, collaboration, and cooperation. Because when you talk to citizens about what the city government does for them, there may be some grumbling. And when you peel the onion on the grumbling, it's not so much that they say, well, I made a request and nothing happened. Something may have happened. It may have taken a while, but in between the time that they made the complaint and the time that it actually got fixed, they heard nothing. So it's like government is this big black box, and this is part of showing that this is part of breaking down that box and having dialogue with citizens. So here's how it works: you have a cell phone, you see a problem, you report it on your mobile app, and if you take a look in the upper right-hand corner, this was somebody reporting graffiti on the side of a building. So they reported it. And on the left, you can see that the issue was logged, and you get this confirmation. But the confirmation's not that big of a deal. You could think that it says verified official, so somebody clicked a button and said, okay, we've received it. But what's really cool is what happens on the right-hand side, in that it starts an actual dialogue, not just between you and the government, but between you and the government and other citizens, because you can see underneath other citizens have commented on this. So it starts the dialogue where the government official is saying what type of surface is it on, where is it, so they know what kind of equipment to bring, and then when the issue's closed, meaning it's been cleaned up, they know it, right? So this is a good example of turning the government from sort of a vending machine to an actual service. And here's, I'll wait till this comes up. I'm going to show you another one by a company called AvePoint. Civic Technology isn't always built by volunteer hackers, although a lot of the time it is. There are companies that are actually making money on Civic Technology. So here's an example of a company called AvePoint, which I've worked with a lot, that uses similar technology to help any government very quickly spin up a citizen services dashboard, giving citizens an easy way to request a service and giving the city a dashboard to see how it's progressing. And since the goal is to make sure that this is all open and transparent and provides the right level of accountability, regular citizens can see this as well. Let's talk a little bit about housing issues. We'll wait for this to come up. Okay. Vacant and abandoned properties. It's a problem in a lot of neighborhoods. You get a few vacant properties in every neighborhood. In some neighborhoods, you have more than others, and when it becomes endemic, you have a real problem. You witness what happened to Detroit a few years ago, and since then it's come back. But when you have enough vacant properties, things become overgrown, houses become dens for illegal activity, they become unsafe, they become unsightly, and the ultimate worst thing that happens is you start to get a blighted neighborhood. So there's been a few tools that civic technologists have built to deal with this. This one is called Vacant Lot Finder, and it's a tool for helping people and organizations find buildings in Chicago that are not in use and potentially hazardous to the neighborhood around them. And note that I have circled here, there is a link that says report a building to 311. For those of you who don't have 311 in your city, 911 is what you call for emergencies. 311 is where you call for non-emergency reporting to the city government. And so um, they use this to map it out. You can report buildings that are not on the map that you suspect are vacant, and then analysts and data scientists and folks like that can take this data and do stuff with it. So, correlating it with other data sets like income or other issues. This next one, and I know it hasn't come up yet, but it'll come up in a minute. This next one is my favorite Civic Technology project, and it was a project called Large Lots. And I like this because it basically was community organizers, activists, the government, and civic technologists all working together to solve a problem. So here's the problem. The reason you get vacant properties or abandoned properties is, somebody doesn't pay their taxes or they abandon the property and then the city takes the property over, right? And then nothing really happens to it. And the city of Chicago had 13,000 properties on their books. Now, they started a program, I think back in 2000, I'm going to say 2009, called Large Lots, where if you lived next door to a vacant property, to an abandoned property, you could buy that property for $1. Not $1 plus back taxes, $1. And it really didn't have a lot of take up. So, over the 3 years that they had the program, they only sold 33 properties. That's really not a lot of properties. So a group of activists in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago, tech activists, came to the civic tech community and said, you folks all work at companies where it's easy to, you fill out all kinds of applications online and you look at all these maps online. And with our vacant property project here, with Large Lots, a person who lives next door to a property has to go to the city to figure out if it's vacant, then go to the county to figure out the boundaries, then go back to the city to figure out if they can buy it for $1, then they can fill out the application, and you can see where this is going. It's a lot of work to do. And if you're living in a neighborhood with a lot of vacant properties, chances are good you don't have the time to take off of work to constantly be working on this. But if you had something that was just in front of you, just a map that says, give us your address, here's the vacant property next door, it might move more properties. So the civic tech community took a look at this and said, yeah, we can do this. It's easy to build an online application. It's easy to track that application online. It's even easy to build the maps. We think that the problem may be the policy. What if you change the policy so that instead of just being able to buy the property adjacent to you, you can buy a property within a block radius of you? Why don't we see what that does? So they built the application, they built the maps, I'm sorry, the application submission tool, they built the maps, and they tested it on a neighborhood. Now remember I told you that it took 3 years to move 33 properties. Well, they tried this in this one neighborhood of Englewood, and in the first 3 months of the beta, they removed 294 properties off the city's books. And everybody wins in that equation. The city wins because not only do you get the property off the books, now it's taxable property. The neighborhood wins because the rules are you, again, have to live within a block radius, so you know the people who are buying it are invested in the neighborhood. You have to hold it for 5 years, and you can't buy more than 2, so you don't have some prospector coming in and buying up all these properties and doing something that's not in the neighborhood's best interest. So they said, if we could move 10 times the amount in 3 months versus 3 years, let's try this in another neighborhood. So they tried it in another neighborhood. They tried it in Garfield Park. 3 months, 190 lots sold. They tried it in Austin neighborhood. Again, I think at this time it was somewhere around 275 properties. And so now this is a civic tech project that is actively operating in Chicago and doing great things. Let's talk about some civic tech projects that are focused on health. This was a project that was a combination of a civic tech group called Smart Chicago and the City of Chicago's Department of Public Health, which we call Healthy Chicago. The issue here was food poisoning. Um, our chief data officer ate at a restaurant and got really sick, and it made him think about how the almost 20,000 restaurants in the city of Chicago could be better prioritized for inspections by the fewer than 20 health inspectors that we have out there. And so he started looking at all the various data that is out there that could help prioritize which restaurants to track first. So, one aspect of the data model of the algorithm takes a look at places that only get typically inspected once a year. Do they get lazy? Places where there also happens to be, rat baitment calls to 311, stuff like that. The other thing that they did was they put it in the hands of the citizens, saying that the citizens, if they get sick for after eating somewhere, they can either fill out this form or they can tweet that they got sick, and that puts it into the city's system, and it gets prioritized because that should have a more direct correlation than just about anything else. So another example of citizens working with government to make services better. I'm not sure you're going to be able to see this because it's a video, and I don't know how well videos come out in GoToMeeting, but this was just something I did in Excel. Excel has the mapping function. So what this does is this maps out over time the results of various food inspections. Okay, let's switch to water issues. A lot of cities are focused on water issues these days. Um, there are issues that they're looking at around quality of water, around scarcity of water, around flooding. So there have been quite a few civic tech projects that have been done around it. This one was done by a water activist at a group that was called Open City, what is now called DataMade. And it's called Is There Sewage in the ChicagoRiver.com. And it is a really, really simple site. The screen on the left is what you see. Is there raw sewage being dumped into the Chicago River right now? And it's a big fat no, or it's a big fat yes. And you hope that most of the time it's a big fat no. And for those of you not familiar with Chicago and its water system, we have the Chicago River where water goes out, and you have the lake where our fresh water is, where our drinking water is. So most of the time it says no, but should it say yes, you get a screen on the right, and it says which segment of the Chicago River has sewage in it. And then if you're really interested, you can read the official reports from the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, which shows you all of the data, and it can even show you what the particulate is that's in the water, and if it's organic or inorganic, and all that great stuff. The same activist that kicked that one off built this one at the Center for Neighborhood Technology's Urban Sustainability Hackathon. He did this in a weekend. It's called Trek Beach. And for those of you not whose Yiddish isn't as robust as it could be, I'll let you look up Trek Beach. I'll let you look up Trek on Bing. But basically, this is a tool to track E. coli on Chicago's beaches. So Chicago has a lot of beaches. There's like 30 or 40 beaches in Chicago. and you don't want to be on this leaderboard. Um, the leaderboard shows the top 10, the beaches with the most E. coli. Okay, let's switch to something a little more appetizing. Let's talk about the built environment of the city. This is a tool that was built by a group of civic technologists called Edifice. And Edifice is a series of maps that examine Chicago's built environment. And each map shows a different facet of the city. So there's building footprints, demolitions, building violations, new construction. And what's neat about this, aside from the visualization itself, is that the city of Chicago and the county of Cook possess dozens of data sets that touch on Chicago's buildings, from building inspections to zoning to property values. And these folks tied all of these different data sets together, and now we have a very rich map of data on every one of Chicago's over 800,000 buildings. And they call it the Edifice database. And this map is using OpenStreetMaps. Now, while the next slide is loading, I'll tell you a little story about this one. A group of civic technologists in Chicago were sitting around and they were playing SimCity. I myself have never played SimCity, but I'm very familiar with it. And as they were playing with it, they said, you know, I wish that zoning, city zoning, were as simple as SimCity. And they started talking about it, and they said, well, why couldn't it be? And the next thing you know, they built this application and built this series of maps that turn city zoning into a SimCity-like group of maps. And you can see they're even using the same colors. And eventually they added the SimCity music to it, and then they got in trouble for adding that music, so they took that off. But if you've ever tried to, you know, if you're a small business and you want to open up your store or whatever in a particular location, you've got to understand the zoning of the various areas that you're considering. And zoning is really, really complex. But this makes it fairly easy. You can see the areas that are zoned for commercial use, that are zoned for green use, that are for residential use, and that are zoned for industrial use, and those that are zoned for mixed use. And then you can click on a particular area, and instead of just saying, well, this is zone PD 244, which means absolutely nothing, this actually explains it. So the screenshot here, it says, what's here? Well, there's tall buildings and there's a campus here. There's some other large developments. And if you want to build something here, you have to negotiate it with the city planners. You have the freedom of the building design, but it has to work with the city to ensure that it serves the purpose, blah, blah, blah. And you get a lot more of a human explanation so that regular muggles can really understand how zoning works, at least for that area. Okay, legislation. So this is, now we're going into issues of government transparency and accountability. This is a tool called Councilmatic, and Councilmatic is an easy way of seeing what's going on in City Council. So what you can do here is you can either search for legislation and search based on the sponsor or the councilman or the zoning area or the ordinance or the issue, or you can take a look and see specific legislation and what's happened. So you'll take a look here on the top. You can see that there was a ordinance on tow-away zones. You can see the details of it. You can see whether it was routine or non-routine. You can see who the sponsors were. Those are the names of the aldermen who sponsored it. And then on the right, you can see the top sponsors. You can see the topics. And this is a really good site for when it comes election time. And you want to see, what has my alderman been doing? My alderman is this first one. Her name is, this was my old one, Vi Daly. I can click on it and I can see what Vi has voted on and how she's voted. And I can see what she's, what ordinances she's sponsored, and I can really get a good understanding as to whether or not they're aligned to the way that I would vote on those issues. Okay, the next one here is called, we're moving into issues of social justice and social impact. This one was created by some civic technologists and some activists who are focused on incarceration. And this is called $1 million blocks. And in a nutshell, what this is it gives you a map of where we're spending more than $1 million on a block incarcerating individuals, as opposed to and incarcerating individuals for minor drug-related offenses. And their thinking is, are there places where we're spending more money incarcerating people than we could be helping them with maybe having more rehabilitation services or more police activity or social services or drug reform or whatever. In the broadest sense, I think these folks are looking at drug reform, but they're also looking at reinvestment in the actual neighborhoods where you see that we're spending more than $1 million. And you can take a look at this street by street, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood. And really what it's doing is it's giving the activists and the government a way to look at the issue of mass incarceration in various neighborhoods together to come up with some problem-solving tools. And again, this is using open data, and it's using CartoDB for the mapping. All right, going on to another issue, and this is building recycling. I'm sure that you've all heard, or maybe even told your kids, that you should never use the internet to embarrass somebody or to shame somebody. That's actually not entirely true. This is, looks like it's coming back up again. This is a site called mybuildingdoesn'trecycle.com. And the way it works is this. The city of Chicago has an ordinance that says if you own a building with 5 or more units, you have to offer recycling services to your residents. The problem is that it's not enforced. Dan, I see that it's sitting at 98%. Can you actually see this page?
Yep, we can see the screen.
Okay. So it's not enforced. And so what this does is this allows you to report your landlord or report your building owner that your building doesn't recycle when it should. And it's not only a good tool for shaming your landlord, it's also a good tool for analyzing in what neighborhoods this has become predominant. And the reason I brought this one up is this was a hackathon project that turned into a bigger project by a young lady named Claire Mitlin, and it eventually led to city council asking her to come in and testify before the council on the issue and how they can start to solve the issue, if it was really through enforcement or through policy change or through permitting, etc. So real change happening based on a civic technology project. Okay, this is a site called ExpungedEO. That's expunge.io. This was developed by a 22-year-old young lady who saw an issue that was not necessarily an issue that was a technology problem. It was a process problem. It was a process complexity problem. And here's the way it works. Let's say you do something stupid when you're 16. Who hasn't done something stupid when they were 16? Let's say you get into a fight or something, and you wound up being picked up by the police. And you think to yourself, well, it's no big deal. I'm young. When I'm 18, my record will get expunged anyway. It doesn't actually work like that. You actually have to do things to get your record expunged. And what you have to do can be quite complex. So what she did was she said, it's complex, but it's a fairly linear process. Why don't we just build a site that asks you the right questions and takes you through the process and then tells you based on your answers specifically what you have to do. So each one of these is a screenshot. If you take a look starting at the top, it starts with these big fat buttons that says, how old were you when you were arrested? Click. After you were arrested, did you see a judge in court? Click. Was your case thrown out? Click. And you answer all these questions, and at the end, you get this PDF report that says, okay, based on your answers, you do these things. You sign this page and send it here. You and your mom sign this and go to this courthouse and do specifically this. So again, she's taken, a fairly young person has recognized that there was a complex process that's being underutilized by people who could be using it to clear their record, and made it quite simple. So this was one that I was really excited about because, again, taking what could be a complex process enough that keeps people out of doing it and makes it a lot easier for them. Okay. This one has been getting a lot of press lately, and I'll wait till it comes up. Okay, you should be seeing it now. This is called M-Relief, and let me explain this one to you. Let's say that you hit some hard times and you decide you want to see if you're eligible for food assistance. Food assistance in some cities it's called SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. In some cities it's called food stamps. But let's say you need to go see if you're qualified for food stamps. So you go to the city or a social agency, and you stand in line and you pick up the right forms and you fill out the right forms and you stand in line and you give them the forms and they say, actually, you don't qualify for food assistance. Thank you, have a good day. And here you've taken a half day off of work just to find out you're not qualified. Not that you're not qualified, but maybe you should try, it looks like you're qualified for something else, just you're not qualified because it's not their department. So they built this tool called M-Relief, which asks you a series of simple questions, and it tells you whether or not you're qualified for that, or it can make suggestions on what you are qualified. Mr. Hecktman, you're not qualified for food assistance, but you are qualified for housing assistance, and that may achieve the same purpose for you. Or it could say, Mr. Hecktman, you're not qualified for food assistance, but based on what you told us, it sounds like you could use some drug rehab or alcohol counseling, and then it tells you specifically what to do. It says what you need to do is go to this address, talk to this person, here's her phone number, here's her email, she's here at this hour, and here's what you need to bring with you. Okay? So that in itself is really great, but here's the terrific part about this. This was built with empathy in mind, and it recognized that not every citizen, especially not every citizen in underserved neighborhoods, are going to have a smartphone to do this on, or access to a laptop to get on the internet and do this. So the whole thing uses SMS text messaging. You text a number, you tell it what you're looking for, and it guides you through the right questions, and you get texts back saying, yes, you qualify for food assistance. In fact, you should go to this address. They're open at this time. Here's their phone number, etc. So this was an amazing tool because it was built understanding how people who need help go for help. and what they face. And so it's used to address that. Um, they started out as part of Shy Hack Night project. It's the whole this whole operation is run by three young ladies. It started out as a Shy Hack Night project. They're now a Civic Tech company. They went out to Y Combinator for 6 months, and you see these folks in the press all the time now. Fantastic group. Okay, at this point, I timed this perfectly because I wanted 10 minutes for questions. Let me just wrap up by saying that the Civic Tech movement it's very much a 21st century type of social movement because it includes a lot of players. It includes individuals like ourselves. It includes groups that focus on civic tech, like Data Science for Social Good, DataKind, Smart Chicago. It includes for-profit companies like DataMade. It includes foundations like the Knight Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, Omidyar. It includes academia. You see a lot of civic tech happening at the University of Illinois, at Northwestern University, at DePaul, at MIT, at Harvard, at Illinois Institute of Technology. It incorporates organizations that were built for civic tech, like Code for America and Shy Hack Night, and it also includes the government. So um, it's not hard to find an issue that directly impacts you or that you're directly interested in, and then it's probably not that hard to find a group of people who want to help you build the technology to solve it. So I encourage you, wherever you are, if you're interested in this, see what's going on in your area. And I'll leave this up so you can see the resources that we provide for this while we take questions. And I'm going to open up the chat window here too.
All right. Thank you so much, Adam. That was outstanding. It was very interesting to hear how technology is being used to help out all these different creative ways for humankind and just the social issues that are going on in people's cities. Very interesting to see how that's all coming together. If people that are attending the webinar today, if you would like to ask Adam a question about civic technology, you can use the chat window down below in your GoToWebinar controls. Otherwise, if you want to post it in the questions, and I can ask Adam the questions. I've got some questions. So where do people go to find out about events in their local areas regarding civic technology?
Okay, so I predicted that that would be the first question. One of the great things about civic technology is that it's a very organic movement. One of the things that kind of sucks is that it's so organic that it's kind of fragmented, and there's not one single place you can go to. But I can give you some suggestions. First of all, I would start with the Code for America site. That's codeforamerica.org, and see if there's something going on in your city. Second, go to meetup.com and look up civic tech in your area. In fact, just look up civic in your area. A lot of times, civic tech organizations are kind of couched in things like phrases like data for social impact or open data or city data. So look at those terms as well, because that may be your clue that it's a civic tech organization. Most of the major cities have a Code for America brigade, or now they're starting to call them a Code for America network. So like if you're in Chicago, Shy Hack Night is the group where civic technologists get together. And there's all sorts of them in cities, but there's not one single place to go to. Now, having said that, if you find something, go to civicgraph.io, and make sure you enter it in, because this was a group of fellows from New York are trying to build a map of where these civic tech organizations are in the world. So you can look at it now and see what's on there, but also do us a favor and enter that organization in so we can all benefit from it. So codeforamerica.org, meetup.com, civicgraph.io.
Great. Are there any requirements or qualifications that are required for people to get involved in civic technology?
None. In fact, you don't even have to be a technologist. We see a lot of people who want to use civic tech to learn about technology. We have a great need for designers. I'm working on projects right now where it all works. It just looks ugly. So we need people who are into design. We need people who are into data analysis. We need people who are into writing. If you have a skill in anything, there's probably a way to factor it into civic tech. But the mere fact that you're part of PASS probably tells me that we could really use your data skills. But no, you don't need to have particular requirements. Anybody can do, and in fact, anybody can not only do this, anybody can start their own. If you have an issue, I was at a suburb of Detroit the other day where their issue was around leaves being raked from the street, and that's something I never thought of as a civic issue. But then they said, "Well, here's why it is," and they built themselves a little movement around it. So anything.
Neat. Um, so if you have an idea or if you're interested in building an app to help solve something, what is the best way to go about to start a hackathon?
That's a good question. Well, what I would do is, well, the first thing I would do is I would see um, if there are others that are interested in the issue and or have the technical skills that you need to help you. Really, all you need are a few people. And then I would see if there's already a civic tech organization in your area that you can talk to them about and have build the hackathon with them. Barring that, just light up your own hackathon, put it out on Meetup, and see who's interested in it. And here's the other thing: you're tell your city about it. Tell your neighborhood about it. If you have a chief data officer in your city, great. If you're not, if you have just somebody who's focused on IT, great. Make sure that the people, your public servants, know that you're doing it because they can be super, super helpful in helping you spread the word about your hackathon.
Great. Okay, here's how would you approach a local government or city hall to encourage opening data or granting access for projects such as these?
Okay, so that is the first step when you're in a city of any size is making sure that the government opens up their data. You really have to advocate for it, and unfortunately, the smaller the city, the harder it becomes. Now, we lucked out in Chicago because back in when Rahm Emanuel became our mayor, one of the first things he did was an executive order that said all data has to be open by default, and every department has to have a liaison to make sure that all their data is being opened up. That's great when you're in a big city that has the resources to do that. And it's also good when you're in a city, and this is nothing against our city, but you're in a city where you have, let's just say that where you have a strong executive branch. And Chicago has historically had a strong mayor's office and strong mayors. In other cities, you may have to advocate for it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with constantly pestering your city and building a movement around it. It may be something that you absolutely have to advocate for. And you'll find a lot of support, right? And the government may come back and say, well, we just don't have the resources to do it, so here's your PDF. Well, show them that there are tools that'll scrape PDFs and put them in data, and that from that point on, they should be putting their data out there. And the other thing is that I would suggest that you make sure that your government understands the value to them of open data. It's not just about transparency and accountability. It's also about efficiency, effectiveness, and communication. So that's kind of your talking track on how you're going to advocate for it.
Great, outstanding. Thank you so much, Adam. I want to thank everyone for attending today to listen to Adam talk about the civic technology movement. Up on the screen here, we have that survey link if you want to get more information, find out how you can get involved with the past civic technology movement. Um, Thanks again. Adam, do you have any parting words or advice for our
Go for,
attendees today?
go forth and hack.
Go forth and hack. Outstanding. Thank you so much, Adam. Thanks again to everyone that attended. Just a reminder, as you exit out, there will be a follow-up survey for you to fill out. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we will be sending out an email with this information about the civic technology to how you can get involved. Thanks everyone for attending, and thanks again, Adam. Wonderful presentation, and thanks for enlightening us today.
Thank you for having me.